Hello everyone, this is Shanku and welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to talk about Spring Batch application and I'm going to demonstrate how we can create a Spring Batch application. So if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe, and when you subscribe, please click on the bell icon so that you never miss a video on my channel. So basically we need batch applications when we have a huge amount of data and we would want to process that data in chunks, and we need to read that data in chunks and then do some processing on that data, do some transformation on the data, and then store it in some other place, maybe a database or a flat file or stuff like that. So yeah, that is when we would need a batch application, and Spring Boot and Spring Batch really has given us a lot of utilities and has made building Spring Batch applications really easy. So I've already created a project called Spring Batch Demo for this demonstration, and let's take a look at the folder structures here. We have src main Java, which will be holding the Java classes for us, and then we have src main resources, which will be holding the resources. So in this demo, I'm going to read from a flat file, which is essentially going to be a comma separated file, and then I'm going to do some processing on that data, and then I'm going to store it in a flat file after the processing is done. So our inbound file is this. It looks something like this. So we have the student name, and then we have a student age, and this is some student ID. So these are 12 records that we have in this file, and we're going to do some processing on this, and we're going to store it in some other place, another flat file. So after the processing is done, we're going to write it inside this outbound folder. So let's take a look at the Java classes that we have. Okay, so let's first take a look at the dependencies that we have for this project. So let me just open pom.xml. So if I move to the dependencies section inside the POM, we can see we have a Spring Boot starter batch. So this is a very handy project that has been created by Spring Boot, and it provides a lot of utilities for our batch processing, and we can just focus on the business logic for writing the code, and we need not worry about how the processing would be done, how would be calling the readers, how the writers would be called, how the processors would be called. So it's really easy with Spring Boot starter projects. So again, we have Spring Boot starter test. This is for testing. So, and this is for testing the batch application. So we have Spring Batch test. That's all we have for dependencies. Now let's take a look at the main files, Java files. So this is essentially going to be the entry point for our application. So it just has this annotation called Spring Boot application, and here I have written this tag called exclude and a data source auto configuration dot class, because when we write this enable batch processing, this annotation enable batch processing by default considers that we are going to read from a database, and so it tries to auto configure a data source for us, and if it doesn't find a data source, or if it doesn't find a database dependency in the class path, such as H2 database or SQL database or whatever database, it would throw an exception. So to prevent that auto configuration from happening, I have just included this in this tag. So this would stop the auto configuration. This would tell Spring, okay, I don't want auto configuration for any database or any data source. So I have just included this here. And if we just move to the configuration. So here first we'll be having the reader bean. So I have created the bean right here, and this reader bean would be injected into this variable, or yeah, this variable item reader. So this is of the type item reader, and flat file item reader is an item reader. So this is going to be injected by type, and here we are creating the flat file item reader bean, or the item reader bean, and here we are creating an instance of the flat file item reader, and then we are setting the resource, setting the path, or setting the resource for the inbound file, or the path for the inbound file. So that is going to be inside src main resources, and it's going to be inside inbound folder, and the file holding the records is named as student.txt. And then I have set the line mapper. So this is gonna tell the reader how each line is gonna look like. So we are saying that the first field is gonna be name, the second field is gonna be age, and the third field is gonna be ID, and it is gonna tokenize each line based on these three fields. And we haven't set a delimiter here, but by default the delimiter is a comma. So we have comma separated records in our file. So this is going to be the name of the student, and then this is going to be the age, at 20 is going to be the age, and then this is going to be the ID for that particular student. So, and all these fields are going to be wrapped up into this Pojo class called student, and this is how the student class looks. It's very simple Pojo class. It's it just has three fields, a string name, an int age, and a string ID. So that is basically it. And then we have this item writer here. So again, we have taken a flat file item writer, so that is used for writing, flat files such as CSVs or TXT files, or yeah, flat files basically. So here I have instantiated flat file item writer object, and then I'm setting the resource. So I'm telling the writer that we have to place the file, the outbound file, or the processed record inside this file. So it's going to be inside outbound folder, and it's going to be inside this file student-out.txt. And then this is for delimiting the records. So each record is going to be delimited by a by a pipe. So inside the source file, we are going to have records delimited by comma, and inside the destination file, or inside the process file, we are going to have records delimited by pipe. So that is what we have set here. All right, and then we are just from the object that we are getting from the reader. So the reader is going to return a student object, and that is going to go to the processor, and the processor again is going to return a student object after doing some processing on that particular student object, and that is going to be fetched by the writer. And then the objects that are fetched by the writer are going to be used for extracting these fields. So the first field is going to be name, the second field is going to be age, and the third field is going to be ID. So these fields should look exactly the same as we have defined here inside the Pojo class. And then we are aggregating all the records, and setting the delimiters here, and then writing to the file. And apart from that, we have step builder factory, job builder factory. So these are just auto wired stuff, and the dependencies are going to be injected by and Spring, and the objects for these are going to be created by Spring and injected by Spring as well. And this enable batch processing is making everything possible, all the auto wiring stuff possible here. So if you want to auto wire all these, and if you want Spring to provide the object for auto wiring into these fields, we need to define this enable batch processing annotation here, right? And then we have just set up the step and the job. So this is again a bean that we have defined for setting up the step. We're just defining the reader, the writer, the processor, and the writer here. And we're setting the chunk sizes too. So we are saying that each thread is going to read 2 records at a time from the source file, and then those 2 records are going to be processed by the processor, and then they are going to be returned to the or they're going to be sent to the writer, and those 2 records are going to be written at a time by each thread. And then we are setting up the job here. So that is basically it. Now let's take a look at the processor. So the processor is going to receive a student object that is read from the source file by the reader, and then it's just going to set the name to uppercase, and it's going to just transform the ID by adding this sch-0009 to the end of the ID, student ID, and then it's just going to return that transform student to the writer. So that is basically it. Now let's try to run this project and see how it works. So right now we don't have anything inside. If I refresh this, there's nothing inside the outbound folder here. So if you run this application, we expect that this would generate a file which will be stored inside the outbound folder that we see there. So let's just run it. All right, let's refresh this. Okay, now we can see we have this student-out.txt file inside this outbound folder. So that is exactly the name that we had set here, this one. Okay, let's just open this and compare it with the source file. So inside the source file we have the student name as student1, and inside the student out.txt file we have student1 in caps. So that is basically the transformation that we're doing inside the processor. And then we are delimiting each field, or we are delimiting the fields using pipes. And then after each ID, after each student ID, we can see this sch-0009 has been appended. So that is a transformation again that we're doing inside the processor. So that is how Spring Batch applications work, and that is how Spring Boot makes it very easy for us to write batch applications, and it does a lot of work under the hood that is not visible to us. And we can have multiple threads running and working on different parts of the input file, and we can have asynchronous executions of those particular tasks. So yeah, those are basically the fancy stuff, all the fancy stuff that we can do with Spring Boot, and Spring. So this was a very simple example of Spring Batch application and how Spring Batch applications work. And I'll put this code in GitHub. I'll share the link in the description below for this particular project. And yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy, please give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.